trying to put in the cam bearings. I don't have a proper slide hammer, so first thought was dry ice. Turns out nobody in town has dry ice because it's a long way to drive it unless I want to buy 150 kilos of it, which I don't need. Second thought was liquid CO2. Turns out he has a order of liquid nitrogen coming today in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. So I'm gonna head home now. He's gonna swing by and give me some liquid nitrogen, and we'll put the cam bearings in right nice and easy.
Gotta get it flush, or you gotta get it all the way through?
Gotta get it all the way in
there. Oh, shit.
They're just too thin, they warm up too quickly.
Yeah, well, you know what else could work too is if I were to spray your engine, or your motor.
Yeah.
That'll
shrink the motor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just have to come up with something else.
I mean, I can give you this stuff should be able to stay in a cooler. If you got a cooler, I could dump a bunch in the cooler and you can leave them.
Okay. Yeah, as long as I can get it started, then I can. So, public service announcement. Liquid nitrogen and freezing camshaft bearings does not work to install them. There's just not enough thermal mass to keep in the cold, and as soon as they touch the block, they warm up and expand again. It's enough to get them in maybe like a couple mils, but after that, they just expand. But you can see that I have the new ones in here. I tried using the ABS pipe fittings that I used to get them out, and that didn't work at all. I couldn't get them centered enough, and there was no way to pull them on and get them in there square and straight because there wasn't any room on the engine stand. It might work if you had a different stand, but the best way I found to take them out and put them in is to rent a bearing race and seal driver set. These ones are like this. They're made of aluminum. They're not exactly perfectly the right size, so make sure you get them lined up right. These have a 1/2-inch hole that fits on 1/2-inch rod. Comes with this little driver guide, but that doesn't work for what we're doing. I believe it's this size is pretty close. It's pretty close. It could be a little bit bigger by like 1/2 millimeter, but it works close enough. The ID of the bearing isn't quite right, so if you had it off center, it'll sit like that, so you got to make sure it's lined up straight and flush. So these work. Obviously got them in there. Because it could be a little bit bigger, the inside edge is a little bit rolled, so I just had to flatten out the little bit of rolled lead on the inside, so hopefully that doesn't hurt anything, but the rest of the bearing is in there nice and square, so it should be okay. Everything feels good and square and straight. You also want to put a slight little dab of Loctite 635 or any kind of green Loctite sleeve retaining compound. That'll make sure that they don't rotate or move. You don't need a whole lot, just like a couple dots, hardly anything, but this will give you some insurance. So what can happen is, with this method especially, and I've read that it can happen with the proper installer too, is on the face of it, you can get some slight mushrooming. So like it kind of flanges up like that. From what I've been reading, that's okay. You can just scrape it down or sand it out with some light sandpaper. Fortunately, I've got the original camshaft here, so I'm going to carefully install it, rotate it a bit to try and find the high spots if there are any, and then I've got some 800 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to lightly sand down any flanges that I find. So just even doing that took out a lot of the high spots. You can kind of see the little bits that it's taken off and galled over. Ideally they would just go in perfectly, and that might happen with the proper tools. Overall, they don't look in bad condition. They're definitely not scored. It's just the very edges that have kind of mushroomed over. So wherever the camshaft has kind of burnished and made really polished, we're just going to take a little scratch of sandpaper, take a look at it, and just lightly flatten it out. Okay, I can't feel any high spots, so we're just going to clean out all the little fuzzies. And try and put the cam back in. So they definitely look and feel okay. There's no major gouging, there's no more flanges on anything. The cam slides in and out very easily. I am satisfied with this result. I think this is one of those cases where, as expensive and frustrating as it is, it's worth it to buy the proper tool. If you can find someone who has a cam installer, and you can borrow it, great. Otherwise, I think it's best to cough up the money and buy one. That does it for today.